My wife's ashes hadn't even cooled when her sister tried to take our home. The memorial service was still going on. People were still crying, still hugging, still saying how wonderful Margaret had been. And there was Diane, cornering me by the refreshment table, talking about property deeds and legal claims like we were at a business meeting instead of my wife's funeral. The house was supposed to go to family, Diane said, keeping her voice low so no one else could hear. Real family. Margaret promised me years ago. I stared at her. 63 years old, and I thought I'd seen everything. I was wrong. We were married for 41 years, Diane. I am family. You're a mechanic. She said it like it was a disease. You married up, Harold. Everyone knew it. Margaret deserved better, and now that she's gone, Richard and I are going to make sure her assets go where they belong. Richard, her husband, a real estate developer who'd been circling our property for years. Our house sat on 3 acres in Knoxville, Tennessee. Prime land now, worth 10 times what we paid for it in 1984. They didn't care about Margaret. They cared about the dirt she was buried in. Get away from me, I said. We'll talk through lawyers if we have to talk at all. Diane smiled. Not a grieving smile, a confident smile. We already have lawyers, Harold. Good ones. You'll be hearing from them soon. She walked away, and I stood there holding a cup of coffee I couldn't drink, surrounded by people who loved my wife, while her own sister plotted to take everything we'd built together. Margaret had been gone for 6 days. 6 days since the ambulance came. 6 days since I held her hand as she slipped away. 6 days since my entire world collapsed. ALS, that's what killed her. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease. The doctors diagnosed her 3 years ago, and we'd been fighting it together ever since, watching her body fail while her mind stayed sharp, watching the woman who used to dance with me in the kitchen become unable to lift a spoon. I thought I was prepared for her death. I wasn't prepared for this. The memorial ended. People left. My daughter Rachel helped me clean up, her eyes red from crying. She was 38, a nurse in Nashville, and she'd been driving up every weekend for the past year to help care for her mother. Dad, you look exhausted. Why don't you go lie down? I can finish here. I'm fine, sweetheart. You're not fine. None of us are fine. She hugged me. But we will be. Mom would want us to be. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered through the house, touching Margaret's things. Her reading glasses on the nightstand. Her cardigan draped over the chair. The recipe box she'd kept since her grandmother gave it to her, stuffed with index cards covered in her handwriting. I picked up the recipe box. Heavy oak, brass hinges, worn smooth from 50 years of use. Margaret used to joke that this box was worth more than our wedding rings because it contained her grandmother's buttermilk biscuit recipe. I opened it, started flipping through the cards. Apple pie, chicken casserole, pot roast, memories of meals she'd made, holiday dinners, Sunday suppers. Then I found a card that didn't belong. It wasn't a recipe. It was a note, written in Margaret's handwriting, dated 8 months ago. Harold, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Go to the garage. Look in the red toolbox, bottom drawer, under the socket wrenches. Everything you need is there. Don't let Diane win. I love you forever. M. I read it 3 times. Then I walked to the garage. The red toolbox had been my father's. I'd had it for 40 years, and Margaret knew I never let anyone touch it. The perfect hiding place. I opened the bottom drawer, moved the socket wrenches. Underneath was a large manila envelope and a USB drive. I brought everything inside, sat at the kitchen table, and opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter, 8 pages, front and back, in Margaret's careful handwriting. My dearest Harold, if you're reading this, it means I've left you. I'm so sorry, my love. I'm sorry for leaving, sorry for the pain you're feeling, and sorry for what I'm about to tell you. I've known about Diane and Richard's plans for over 2 years. They think I didn't know, but I've always known my sister. She's been waiting for me to die since the day I married you. Not because she loved me, Because she wanted what I had. You remember when Richard offered to buy our property 5 years ago? And when we said no, he laughed it off? He wasn't laughing. He was planning. He and Diane have been consulting lawyers, building a case, waiting for the moment they could strike. Their plan is simple. After I die, they're going to claim that I promised them the property. They have a forged letter supposedly written by me expressing this wish. They're going to argue that you coerced me into putting your name on the deed, that you took advantage of a sick woman, that the marriage was unhappy and I wanted to leave everything to my blood relatives. It's all lies. Every word. But they have money, connections, and lawyers who specialize in exactly this kind of theft. So I've spent the last 8 months preparing. Not for death. I accepted that a long time ago. I've been preparing to protect you, to protect our home, to protect everything we built together. In this envelope and on the USB drive, you'll find everything you need. 1. My updated will, signed, witnessed, and notarized by an attorney Diane doesn't know. It explicitly leaves everything to you and Rachel. The forged letter they plan to use is dated after this will, which makes their document invalid even if they could prove it was real, which they can't. 2. Video recordings of me explaining my wishes clearly and stating that I want Harold James Whitmore to inherit all my assets. I recorded these with a lawyer present. They're admissible as evidence of my intent. 3. Documentation proving the letter Diane plans to use is a forgery. I obtained a sample of the paper they used. It's a type that wasn't manufactured until 2022, but the letter is supposedly from 2019. I also have handwriting analysis from a certified expert stating the signature doesn't match mine. 4. Evidence of Richard's business practices. He's been bribing county officials to approve his developments. I have bank records, emails, and recorded phone conversations. Tennessee is a one-party consent state. I recorded everything legally. 5. Medical records documenting my diagnosis and the progression of my illness. They prove I was mentally competent when I made all legal decisions about our property. Diane will try to claim I was incapacitated. These records prove otherwise. 6. A recorded conversation from 18 months ago where Diane explicitly discusses her plan to contest my will and take our property from you. She didn't know I was recording. She admits everything. I know this is overwhelming. I know you're grieving and exhausted and probably angry that I didn't tell you. You have every right to be angry. But Harold, I know my sister. If I'd told you, you would have confronted her. You're not a man who hides from conflict. And if you'd confronted her, she would have accelerated her plans, maybe even tried something while I was still alive. I couldn't risk that. So I worked in secret. Every doctor's appointment, every time you thought I was resting, I was preparing. Building a case. Gathering evidence. Making sure that when the battle came, you would win. You're probably wondering how I did all this while fighting ALS. The truth is, having a purpose kept me going. Every day I worked on this project was a day I had a reason to wake up. Not just to say goodbye, but to fight. To protect the man I love from people who want to destroy him. You've been my rock for 41 years, Harold. You never complained when I couldn't walk anymore. You learned to cook when I couldn't hold a spatula. You carried me to bed every night for the last 6 months and never once made me feel like a burden. Now it's my turn to carry you. Fight for our home, my love. Fight for everything we built. And when you win, because you will win, live the rest of your life knowing how much I loved you. Forever yours, Margaret. P.S. There's a video on the USB drive. Watch it when you're ready. It's the most important one. I don't know how long I sat at that kitchen table. An hour, maybe 2. The letter was wet with tears I didn't remember crying. Then I got up, found my laptop, and plugged in the USB drive. There were dozens of files, legal documents, audio recordings, financial records, and videos. So many videos. I clicked on the one labeled, For Harold. Watch first. Margaret appeared on the screen. She was sitting in this very kitchen, at this very table. The timestamp said it was recorded 6 months ago. She looked thinner than I remembered, her face drawn, but her eyes were bright and fierce. "Hi, baby," she said. "If you're watching this, it means I'm gone. And if you found the recipe box, it means you're going through my things like I knew you would. You old sentimental fool." She smiled. Even through the screen, even knowing she was gone, that smile broke me. "I know you're hurting right now. I know you're probably sitting there crying, getting tears all over my grandmother's table. That's okay. Cry as much as you need to. You earned those tears. But when you're done crying, I need you to fight. Diane is coming for everything. She's been waiting for years, and now she's going to strike. She's going to try to take our home, our savings, everything we worked for since 1983. You might think I'm being paranoid. I'm not. I have proof. 18 months ago, Diane called me. You were at the shop. She thought I was asleep, but I was actually having a good day. I answered the phone, and she didn't know I'd set it to record. Let me play you part of that conversation. The video cut to an audio file. I heard Diane's voice, clear and unmistakable. "Margaret's not going to last much longer. The doctors say maybe 2 years. When she's gone, Richard and I are going to challenge the will. That property is worth $2 million now. Harold can't fight us. He's a mechanic. He doesn't have the resources." Another voice. "Richard. What about the daughter? Rachel? She's a nurse. She makes $40,000 a year. She can't afford lawyers either. We'll tie this up in court for years. Eventually, they'll settle. They'll have to. And you're sure Margaret doesn't know?" Diane laughed. "My sister is dying. She's not thinking about property disputes. She's thinking about morphine doses." The recording ended. Margaret's face returned to the screen. "That's who my sister really is. That's what she thinks of you, of Rachel, of me. We're obstacles to her. Dollar signs to be claimed. But here's what Diane doesn't know. I've been building a case against her for 2 years. Every piece of evidence. Every dirty deal Richard has made. Every lie she's told. It's all in this drive, Harold. Enough ammunition to destroy them if you have to. Enough proof to make sure you never lose our home. Go see a lawyer named Patricia Holloway. Her card is in the envelope. I hired her specifically for this. She knows everything, has copies of everything, and she's expecting your call. Fight for our home, baby. Fight for 41 years of memories. Fight for the garden where we planted roses when Rachel was born. Fight for the workshop where you built her first dollhouse. Fight for every Sunday dinner and Christmas morning and ordinary Tuesday night we spent together in those walls. Don't let Diane take that from you." She paused, wiped her eyes. "I'm sorry I couldn't fight beside you. I love you, Harold, forever and always. Now go show my sister what happens when she messes with my family." The video ended. I sat in the dark kitchen for a long time. Then I picked up the phone and called Patricia Holloway. The legal battle started 2 weeks later. Diane filed exactly as Margaret predicted, claiming undue influence, mental incapacity, and a verbal promise that the property would go to her. She produced the forged letter, dated 2019, supposedly expressing Margaret's wish to leave everything to her beloved sister. I was ready. Patricia was a small woman with gray hair and glasses that made her look like a librarian. But in the courtroom, she was a shark. Margaret had chosen well. "Your Honor," Patricia said at the first hearing, "the plaintiff's case rests entirely on a document that is demonstrably fraudulent. We have expert analysis proving the paper used was not manufactured until 2022, 3 years after the letter was supposedly written. We have handwriting analysis proving the signature does not match Margaret Whitmore's genuine signature. And we have video testimony from Mrs. Whitmore herself, recorded in the presence of a licensed attorney, explicitly stating her wishes. She played the video. The whole courtroom watched my dead wife explain that she was leaving everything to me, that her sister had no claim to her property, that any document suggesting otherwise was a lie. Diane's face went pale. "This is ridiculous," her lawyer sputtered. "The video could have been made under duress." Mrs. Whitmore was seriously ill. She was seriously ill, Patricia agreed. That's why we also have her complete medical records documenting her mental competency throughout the course of her illness. Signed statements from 3 different doctors confirming that she was of sound mind when making all legal decisions. And we have this. She held up a document. A psychological evaluation conducted 4 months before Mrs. Whitmore's death, specifically assessing her capacity to make legal and financial decisions. She scored in the 98th percentile for cognitive function despite her physical limitations. The judge reviewed the documents. His expression grew increasingly stern. "The defense seems well prepared, Mr. Callahan," he said to Diane's lawyer. "Do you have any evidence to counter these claims?" Callahan shuffled papers, whispered urgently with Diane and Richard. "We request a continuance, Your Honor, to gather additional evidence. You've had 6 months to gather evidence." Motion denied. The hearing lasted 3 hours. By the end, the judge dismissed Diane's claim entirely. The forged letter was ruled inadmissible. Margaret's will stood. But Diane didn't give up. She appealed. She filed new motions. She claimed the videos had been manipulated, that Patricia had coached Margaret, that I had somehow orchestrated this entire defense. Each time, we were ready with more evidence. When they claimed I had isolated Margaret from her family, we produced records of every phone call, every visit, every holiday dinner for the past decade. Margaret had documented everything. When they tried to subpoena Rachel, hoping she'd contradict our case, we produced letters Margaret had written her daughter, explaining exactly what Diane was planning and why Rachel needed to support her father. When Richard hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on me, we handed Patricia the evidence of his bribery schemes. The investigator quit the case within a week when he realized what his client was really like. Finally, 6 months after Margaret died, we sat down for a settlement conference. Diane, Richard, their lawyers, Patricia, and me, across a long conference table in a downtown office building. "Let's be realistic about where we are," Patricia said calmly. "Your case has failed at every stage. The forged letter has been thoroughly debunked. Margaret's wishes are documented beyond any reasonable doubt. You have no legal standing to contest the will." "We can keep fighting," Richard said. "We can tie this up in appeals for years." "You could. But then we would be forced to submit the evidence we've been holding in reserve." She placed a thick folder on the table. "Bank records showing payments from Barrett Development, Mr. Bradford's company, to County Commissioner Wilson. Emails discussing approvals for developments that should never have been permitted. Recorded phone conversations in which Mr. Bradford explicitly discusses bribing public officials." Richard's face went white. Margaret Whitmore was a very thorough woman. She spent the last years of her life documenting not just your scheme to steal her property, but your criminal activities as well. "That's illegal," Richard sputtered. "Recording without consent. Tennessee is a one-party consent state. Margaret was on those calls. Every recording was made legally." Patricia leaned forward. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to drop all claims to the Whitmore estate. You're going to agree to never contact Harold Whitmore or Rachel Whitmore again unless it's a family emergency. And in exchange, we won't forward this evidence to the FBI." "That's blackmail," Diane hissed. "It's a settlement offer. Blackmail would be asking for money. We're not asking for money. We're asking you to leave a grieving widower alone, to stop trying to steal his home, to finally, after 63 years, let your sister rest in peace." The room was silent. Diane looked at Richard. Richard looked at his lawyer. The lawyer whispered something I couldn't hear. Then Diane signed the settlement agreement, Richard signed, their lawyers witnessed. It was over. Walking out of that building, Patricia stopped me on the sidewalk. "Your wife was one of the most remarkable women I've ever met," she said. "She came to me 3 years ago, right after her diagnosis. She knew exactly what was going to happen, and she spent every day she had left making sure you'd be protected." "That's who she was," I said. "Always taking care of everyone else. She also left you something. Asked me to give it to you after the case was resolved." Patricia handed me a small envelope. Inside was a flash drive and a note. "For Harold. When you've won, watch with Rachel. That night, my daughter came over. I told her everything, showed her the original letter from the recipe box, explained what her mother had done, how she'd spent her final years fighting a war none of us knew about. Rachel cried, then she laughed, then she cried again. "That is so, Mom," she said. Planning everything, not telling anyone, making sure we'd be okay. She left us one more video, said to watch it together. We sat on the couch in the living room where Margaret had spent her last months. I plugged in the flash drive, clicked on the single video file. Margaret appeared on screen. She was in our bedroom this time, propped up in the hospital bed we'd rented when she couldn't use our regular bed anymore. She looked tired, frailer than in the other videos. This one was recorded close to the end. "Hi, my loves," she said. "If you're watching this, it means Harold won." I knew he would. My husband's the most stubborn man in Tennessee. It's one of the many things I love about him. Rachel squeezed my hand. "I wanted to leave you one more message. The other videos were about the fight. This one's about what comes after. Harold, I know you. You're probably sitting there thinking about everything we lost, the years we should have had, the grandchildren you wanted to see together, the trips we never took. Stop it. I mean it. Stop thinking about what we didn't have and start remembering what we did have. 41 years, baby. 41 years of morning coffee and evening walks and ridiculous arguments about whether the toilet paper goes over or under. 41 years of building a life together, raising the most amazing daughter in the world, growing old in a home we made with our own hands. Not many people get that. We were lucky." She shifted on the bed, wincing slightly. "Rachel, sweetie, I'm so proud of the woman you became. A nurse, just like you always wanted, taking care of people, making a difference. That's my legacy right there, more than any house or property. You're my legacy. Take care of your father. I know he acts tough, but he's a marshmallow inside. Make sure he eats something besides frozen dinners. Make sure he gets out of the house. Make sure he knows he's not alone. And Harold?" She looked directly at the camera. "Live your life. Don't spend what's left of it mourning me. Plant new roses in the garden. Build something beautiful in your workshop. Dance in the kitchen, even if it's by yourself. And if you meet someone someday, someone who makes you smile, don't feel guilty. Don't think you're betraying me. I want you to be happy. That's all I ever wanted. I loved you for 41 years. I'll love you forever. But forever doesn't mean lonely. It means carrying me with you while you keep on living. Can you do that for me?" Tears were streaming down my face. Rachel was sobbing beside me. "I have to go now. Getting tired. But before I do, I want to say one more thing. Thank you. Thank you for choosing me all those years ago. That skinny girl from Maryville with the too loud laugh and the bossy sister. You could have married anyone. You picked me, and you never stopped picking me. Not once. Not for 41 years. That's the greatest gift anyone ever gave me. I love you both. Take care of each other. And remember, I'm not really gone. I'm in the roses, in the kitchen, in every memory we made in that house. Bye, my loves. See you on the other side." She blew a kiss at the camera. The video ended. Rachel and I held each other for a long time. 2 years have passed since that night. I'm 65 now. Still living in the same house, still tending the same garden, still working on projects in my shop. The roses Margaret planted 20 years ago bloomed bigger than ever last spring. I like to think she had something to do with that. Rachel visits every weekend. She got married last year to a good man named David, who I actually like, which Margaret would say is a miracle. They're expecting their first child in the fall. A little girl. They're going to name her Margaret. I think about my wife every day. When I make coffee in the morning, I still pour 2 cups out of habit. When I hear a song she loved on the radio, I turn it up loud and let myself remember. When I sit on the porch at sunset, I talk to her, tell her about my day, about Rachel, about the grandchild she'll never meet but somehow helped create. The lawsuit, Diane, Richard, all of it seems far away now. I heard through relatives that Richard's development company went under last year. something about an investigation. I try not to feel satisfaction about that, but Margaret would probably laugh. I still have her recipe box. Still have her cardigan draped over the chair. Still have a USB drive full of videos I watch whenever I need to hear her voice. Last week was our anniversary. 43 years, technically, though she only lived to see 41 of them. I drove to the cemetery with a bouquet of roses from our garden. "We did it, sweetheart," I told her headstone. "Everything you planned, it worked. The house is safe, Rachel's happy, and I'm still here. Still getting up every morning, still living, just like you asked." A breeze stirred the leaves above me. Probably just the wind. But I like to think it was her, listening. That night, I watched one of her videos. Not the legal ones, not the strategic ones. One she labeled, "For Harold. When You Miss Me." In it, she just talked. About nothing important. About the weather, about a book she'd read, about how the neighbor's dog kept digging under our fence. Just her voice, her face, her presence. That's what I miss most. Not the big moments, the small ones. The ordinary days that felt so ordinary at the time and now feel like treasures I didn't know I had. If you're watching this and you've lost someone you love, I want you to know something Margaret taught me. Love doesn't end when someone dies. It transforms. It becomes memory, becomes legacy, becomes the quiet strength that gets you through impossible days. Margaret protected our family from beyond the grave, but more than that, she showed me what love really means. Not just romance and affection, but sacrifice and preparation and thinking about the people you love even when you're facing the hardest thing anyone can face. She spent her dying days making sure I'd be okay. And I am okay. Not because the pain went away. It never does. But because I know I was loved that much. That completely. That forever. Next month, Rachel and David are coming over for Sunday dinner. We're going to cook Margaret's pot roast recipe from the old oak box with the brass hinges. We're going to set a place for her at the table, just like we do every family meal. And afterward, we're going to watch one of her videos together. The one she made for Rachel's first child. She recorded it 2 years before she died, hoping she'd someday have a grandchild. "Hi, little one," she says in the video. "I've watched it 100 times. I'm your grandmother. I'm sorry I couldn't be there to meet you in person. But I want you to know something important. You come from people who loved each other. Really loved each other. And that love lives on in you. That's Margaret's real legacy. Not the house, not the evidence she gathered, not the legal battle she won from beyond the grave. Her legacy is love. The kind that doesn't stop when the breathing stops. The kind that echoes through generations. I found a note in her recipe box last week that I hadn't noticed before. It must have been stuck to the back of another card. Just 2 words. In her handwriting. "Thank you." I added my own note and slipped it back in the box. "Thank you too," I wrote. "For everything. The roses are blooming again this year. And every morning, I pour 2 cups of coffee."